Welcome back to the channel. We're going to do a little bit of sawing today, hence why the sawmill's ripping and ready to go. I've got some logs up here and I was going to cut them into 8-foot lengths. I can't quite remember how long these are, but I think they're 16, so we'll cut them into 8-foot lengths before we get them sawn, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get them sawn into some dimensional lumber. Usually I'll make the small ones into 2x4s, 4x4s. They're a little bit bigger 2x6s. I do a lot of building with them, various outbuildings, so that's typically the dimensions that I use. Now over here, before I do that, I'm going to cut up some of these slab wood pieces. You'll notice I already took some out of here. That's because I've used them for camping. I use this stuff for campfire wood that I take with me, and I'm going camping again real soon. So I'm going to cut this up before we get going, and then I come by and I use little totes, and I put the wood in there, and the totes just keep it so if it rains it stays dry. So that's what we're going to do here. One other thing I'll mention over here. Unfortunately for me, there is one heck of a big paper wasp nest underside of that floor, and so I'm not going to go up there for fear that they come out and seek vengeance on me. Last year I got stung probably a good 5 times. The first time I got stung 3 times in a row because I was a little more brave than I should have been, and I saw a box up on the shelf up there, and I peered in there and there was a paper wasp nest, and I just thought I would close the box and then go throw it out behind the shop or out behind the shed. Well, I threw it all right, and as soon as it hit the ground, you can imagine what came at me, and I got stung 3 times before getting back in the tractor cab. The next time I came out, a few days later, I decided I would tempt my fate again, and I would try to move that box. Well, sure enough, they were still there. They were still using that nest, and well, they got me again. I've smartened up a little bit, so we'll leave them alone and we'll get back to sawing. Just as I'm about to start sawing, I just saw something that I don't think I've seen at the sawmill before. I'm going to show you. It's a spider that is eating a toad. That's a bit of a gross one. Check it out. You see that thing? Yikes. Well, there we have it, folks. We took some 12-foot or 12.5-foot logs. Those were relatively small. We made it into something useful. I've got some rough cut 2x4s there. I often make 4-inch wide by 1.5 inch thick, and I like 1.5 inch thick just because when I go to use the material, if I need any type of store-bought hanger, like a hanger bracket of some sort, it will be 1.5 inch wide. You can get 2-inch wide hanger brackets, but they are very difficult to come by where I live. And if I do find them, they typically are very expensive. 1.5 inch wide is what I came up with. Now, as you can see, when we're working at height here, like the case is with a trailer, I didn't have to bend over to do too much. And because of that, it's a lot easier on my back. I can work longer. It's a little more enjoyable. Now, the debris, notice how it falls down below there. Now, it does accumulate right here. So you got to watch this. See where the wheel was actually pushing down on the sawdust? If you let that sit there long enough and it compacts, it can actually cause your wheel to rise up too high. And you want all the weight right down there on the rail, not on the sawdust. So that's a good reminder for me to get in here and scoop this away. You can see it holds moisture as well. Anyways, another thing I'm going to mention here, you'll notice I took this slab wood piece and I decided I would just cut a little more off the top to make it something useful. You just have to be careful with that. I'm sure some of you would have seen. As I was cutting, because the material is not a cant anymore, it's quite thin, it tends to rise up at the ends. And so when I was cutting, see that right there? So some of the tension in that piece caused this to rise up. So when I'm cutting, I should have probably clamped it, but when I'm cutting, I got to be mindful of that. Otherwise, the dimension here will not be accurate. Down here, it's fine. See how that's sitting firm? Likewise, right here, it's firm. But at this end, that's pretty extreme. That's going to cause a huge issue unless you are mindful of that. That's why it's nice when you're cutting and the wood's green and wet like this. Cut it from a cant. If you were to dry this material and you don't dry it well, you don't have lots of weight sitting on it, this right here, this cant, could take a bit of a bow. And then when you go to cut it, unless you can somehow put an extreme force on either end to push it flat, you're going to end up losing a bit of that dimension. So just be mindful of that. But that discussion will be for another day. As always, I appreciate you joining me out of the sawmill. I've got some more logs I'm going to continue cutting, and well, make sure you come back next time. If you look all around me, it doesn't exactly look like the log supply is going to dry up anytime soon. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you like this video, subscribe, check out my other social platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and don't forget, visit sawingwithsandy.com, new website for me, all kinds of merch there, all kinds of blogs, lots going on. See you next time.